Hello everyone, welcome to our Artist Spotlight series presented by Clay County Historical and Arts Council, where we celebrate the creativity, stories, and passion of our local artists. I'm Tess Thomas, your media representative, and your guide through these conversations. In each episode, we'll take a closer look at the people behind the art, exploring their inspiration, their process, and the unique ways they contribute to the cultural fabric of Clay County. Whether you're an art enthusiast, a fellow creative, or simply curious about the talent in our community, we're glad you're here. Let's meet today's featured artist. Today, we're delighted to speak with Kanute Rarey, a gifted storyteller, author, writer, producer, and entertainer. Kanute regularly shares his work through storytelling events across the region. In this interview, we'll explore Kanute's background, his passion for storytelling, and the stories and history that continue to shape Clay County and the surrounding mountains. Kanute, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
You are welcome. I'm very, very happy to be here with you. Looking forward to it. I know it's going to be a lot of fun. And I appreciate being invited and giving an opportunity to talk about storytelling.
Let's just start right in with your background and your inspiration. What first got you interested in storytelling?
Probably because I couldn't act.
Oh, okay.
I was interested in storytelling. I was really interested in performing in community theater. And after 45 years in healthcare, I retired, and in 2013 we had a second home here, and so we came here and sold our home where we lived. And when we moved here, I thought I would get involved in community theater. The truth is that there wasn't really enough time in our schedule for me to commit to 6 to 8 to 10 weeks of community theater in their schedule and do a good job at it, or a job that I would like doing with it. And so after a while, I took a workshop on storytelling at John C. Campbell Folk School with Texas storyteller Miss Elizabeth Ellis. And Elizabeth took me under her wing and was my mentor and continues to be my friend today. And that led me into storytelling.
So how does storytelling become such a big part of your life?
I think, as I said, I had gone to a workshop at the John C. Campbell Folk School, and I came out inspired with the idea that stories were important and that telling stories was interesting to me and that it could be entertaining. And so I had looked out and saw folks like Bill Lepp, who's a national storyteller of tall tales, and of other folks like Donald Davis, who is from Waynesville, North Carolina, and is a legendary storyteller and nationally known. And I looked at those folks and I thought this would be really a fun and inspirational thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. How would you describe your storytelling style to someone hearing you for the first time?
Well, my storytelling style really varies, I believe. I think that I use a lot of stories that relate to me and my life because I find it interesting, for one thing, that the things that happen. And I used to tell stories at cocktail parties, that 1 minute elevator speech about career types of topics, not tall tales or even family stories. But we would sit around on the couch and tell family stories over or at the dining room table after Thanksgiving or another holiday meal.
Yeah.
So my style is, I would say, laid back, primitive, but dynamic.
What a great description. What do you hope people carry with them after hearing your stories?
I hope that one of the things I hope about my storytelling is that it'll inspire other people to tell their stories to their family. They don't have to ever take the stage to tell a story. They don't ever have to be a part of a group to tell a story, but to realize the importance of telling their story, communicating their story within their family, within their community, to pass on the information or the experience that they've had.
I agree. I wish I would have listened closer to my grandparents before they passed on, because I feel like a lot of their stories got lost.
Yes.
And so now, on the side, I do legacy videos. I offer that for anyone that's interested in getting their grandparents or parents' stories on video.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. Let's move on to your work and your performances. What do you most enjoy about performing live?
Well, the performing live requires you to be in touch, with yourself in regard to and the audience. There's not even in a Zoom environment where you have a small frame that you're working within, or even in practice, it really isn't real until you're present with an audience, with a group of people, with folks that are interested in what the stories you're telling, particularly those stories that are historical, that relate to history. I always say that I really never tell a story of the history of anything. I tell the stories of history, of whether it's Clay County or whether it's the Appalachian Mountains. It's the story of the Appalachian Mountains. It's not the historical. Dates and times are important,
Right.
and they're a framework. But within that framework, it gives you a lot of opportunity to remember the nuances of that experience or time. So I really enjoy that creative process.
How do you get ready when you're telling stories for a new audience? Like, what's your process? You do a practice?
Well, I actually usually have a framework, an outline, if you will, not to be in front of me at the time, but an outline to give me an idea of my remembering the steps or the stages or the important pieces. Donald Davis talks about a framework. Donald Davis, as I said, is the national storyteller. And his framework is people, places, problems or change, and then progress. And,
Okay.
and if you, so you start for me, looking at that, I look at that important piece, which is that framework. The second thing Elizabeth Ellis taught me was to use pictures. And so people joke about, well, I can't draw. It doesn't matter. You're not really drawing for anybody else. So if a stick figure, whatever that looks like, in my case, a stick figure with a man is that little round head, a little stick body, and little stick legs. And for me, a woman is a little stick head with little curly cues and a little triangle dress that makes it a dress. And if it's the mother, they're taller, and if it's the child, they're shorter. And so that, and you can only imagine what a cow might look like. But the process is, I'm the only one who has to see that.
Sure.
And so Elizabeth talks about using a storyboard. And just like in the movies, they use storyboards much more elaborate than I'm talking about, many more storyboards to shoot shots. And so I'm creating a storyboard that of this picture of this progress of the story. And I have learned that you make these blocks and you draw those pictures, but you also cut them because you may decide that, okay, that picture does look good. I really need to do that. That one needs to come before the other one.
I see.
So you can be creative. Ultimately, as you tell the story more and more, it becomes a process that you know automatically. But it's still always good review. Particularly, I have probably 30 or 40 stories, and so if I haven't, those are the ones that I have, and if you divide them up, a third of them I tell and have told and told and told. A third of them I have told some, and they're a work in progress, if you will. Inside of me, they're a work in progress, but not in front of the audience.
Right.
And then the other third are new, and they're back there, and they may be sitting on a shelf. And I have a great story about my uncle, my great cousin, John Rarey, who was a horse trainer. And I know I've got the core story of the history of John Rarey, but I want to add the segment that talks about the football field in Grove City, Ohio, where legend has it that his horse, the famous horse he had, Cruiser, is buried under the 50-yard line.
Oh, you're kidding.
So to tie those two stories together is a challenge to make it entertaining to the audience and to have a conclusion.
So that's one of yours that's in a work in progress.
That is one of those on the fringe of, it's been performed one or two, I performed that in Texas, because it was a good horse story for Texas.
Sure.
At this Texas Storytelling Festival. But that's been years ago, and it still it's still a work in progress. Still got work to be done on it. So it was well received, and it was a fun time, and it was a ghost story. Actually, I told it as a ghost story because John's been dead for 200 years. So,
sure.
yes.
But you're still adding to that.
Yes.
And working out the kinks.
Yes.
When you start working on a new story, where do you usually begin? Like explain to us how you begin the whole process to work on the story.
Well, a story, it might be something that you say today, or I hear today, or it may be just a phrase. I've heard the phrase, I heard this phrase in my head, the little boy who lived on the edge of the enchanted forest. And that was all and I wrote it down. And I wrote that down, and I write other phrases that come up. Now that particular story is a fantasy. It ultimately is a fantasy. It ultimately goes through an entire segment of this little boy's threat to be drowned in a river, to be saved by a great owl, to learn a lesson in life. But I only started out with that one phrase.
And just one phrase came to you, and you wrote it down, and then eventually the story starts telling itself.
Yes, and then my Aunt Arlene, who raised me, had rules that I had two brothers, Brother Fred, who's 2 years older, and Brother Ike, who's 2 years younger. And she had rules to try to keep us safe because my mother had passed away, and she was taking responsibility, never been married, never had children, took responsibility. And out of that remembrance, I created a story called Aunt Arlene's 5 Rules.
Okay.
So sometimes a story source can come from a variety of directions. Yes.
Do you have to research a lot when you're telling your stories? I guess you would on the historical ones, but...
Even on the family ones, if you're and this really is something for the audience or the folks listening as well. There's a lot we don't know. You were just saying earlier, before a few moments ago, you were saying that you really wish you had listened and asked more questions of your grandparents and those relatives that were alive. And I think we all would like to do that. So a little bit we do know, we have to look at history, and for example, my grandmother and grandfather were born around 1890, and I didn't or really know my grandfather and grandmother until they were about 65 years old. So that was back in 1955, 53. There's a lot of history that they lived through where I can gain a little more appreciation and a better understanding of their story and the story I might talk about them, because they lived through World War I. They lived through World War II. They lived through the Depression. They lived through the Roaring '20s. They lived through the Vietnam War, Korean War. Lots of different wars and lots of different economic times, post World War II. So you begin to get appreciation for maybe who they are and where they are, and some of those elements can come out in the story. Yeah. So I didn't know my grandfather well, except for being my grandfather, who was a farmer, who raised me and raised my brothers. But later in life, I learned more about him. Coincidentally, my aunt and grandmother would take us to town when we were little boys, and we'd be up on the square because, when downtowns were active and you had banks like we have here in Hayesville and stores like we have for Tigers to pick up different, and drugstores. And little ladies would stop my aunt and my grandmother and they would say, "How's Andy? How's Andy?" And I would think, well, who is Andy? Because all I knew of was my grandpa, whose name was Grandpa.
Right.
Grandpa Schweitzer, who happened to be Grandpa Andrew Schweitzer. But I didn't know Andy. And how did these older ladies know Andy? It turned out that during the time my grandfather was younger and a farmer, he was also an auctioneer around the community. He was a dance caller for dances.
Wow.
He was a constable. So he had a variety of experiences, life experiences, which I did not know. And sometimes when people look at older people, they see just older people.
Sure.
They don't see the person that's lived 70 years of life or 80 years of life. So when we talk about background and we look at periods of time, we go through what's the experience that person had to better understand them, and also to better give you a better material and background for the story.
It's surprising that, when we find out that our grandparents, the things that they did and the people's lives that they touched,
Yes.
it's amazing.
Well, family stories, we talk about family stories, and we've been focusing on family stories a little bit. But for example, if you're looking at, I do some presentations on the history of Appalachia, or the Appalachian culture, or even on the history of Clay County. And when you think about that, there are still gaps. There are still gaps in that. Even if you read Carl Moore's book on the history of Clay County, which is a great book with lots of great detail, but there's the general information that's formal information that we have, and his is probably the least formal. He's so dynamic the way he presents. But there's also the nuances of how the Cherokee used and processed deer, and deer in their lives. And today, the history we live today, where the deer is running across the road and we're trying to avoid it with a car. And so there are nuances to the history of that comes along. That's a small and minor example of it, but it is interesting to look at the detail that you have to work with. So, yes.
So what sparked your interest in the Clay County's history?
Well, I live here, for one thing. That's really important. I came to Clay County, and I came to visit Clay County in the late 80s, and I moved to Clay County in 1990. And bought my little house in 1994 that we still live in today. So remembering just what Clay County was like even 30 years ago, when really closer to 40 years ago now, when I came to Clay County, that alone sparked my interest. And then when you look out and you see some of the wonderful things that have happened, and Kathy and I, my wife Kathy and I, had to move away. As they say, we moved away for a while so we make a living so we could retire in Clay County.
Yeah, I get that.
But, which we did, and we love and we enjoy. So Clay County has a rich history. The Cherokee was very interesting. I was a history major in school, so history, I'm drawn to history. How was it? What was it like? In those experiences, and I can still see myself running around with a wooden rifle cut out of wood, and just this complete wooden rifle, and us playing cowboys and Indians. And I've talked to some friends of mine who are Native Americans, and they said, well, the cowboys didn't always win. So in Cowboys and Indians, when the Cowboys and Indians are playing Cowboys and Indians, the Indians win. So,
Correct. I would imagine so.
But anyway, interesting to look at the history, and even deeper back to the history. You know, Columbus arrived in the West Indies in 1492, but sooner or later somebody got here. And when they got here, the Cherokee were already here.
Of course they were.
Yes,
Yeah.
So it's fun. Good to
Yeah.
know.
I had a very interesting interview with Davy Arch that you should watch.
Oh, yes, I know Davey.
A lot of rich Cherokee history in the area. So I understand you're invited to be the keynote speaker at the Chamber of Commerce's annual awards dinner. What made you choose the keynote title, The Unbelievable History of Clay County, Where the Buffalo Roamed?
Well, for one thing, there were buffalo here. So, as a matter of fact, some of the first traces that were created across the mountains were often buffalo herds tracing across the mountains. So, because it's a herd instinct, and it's a little bit like looking at cow paths right now in the fields as you're coming up and down the road on 64. They wear a path. The cows wear a path. Well, the buffalo wore a path. But so I thought that looking way back in the history of Clay County, before it was Clay County, I threw in the point about the buffalo and talking about the buffalo. But as I said earlier, of course there are dates, there are important dates, but it's also the story of the history of Clay County. So it has led me to make up that title because it's maybe unbelievable. There may be some unbelievable things in there, because you have to remember that I'm a storyteller. And that one of the things I love to do is to tell tall tales. So there are points that I said we don't know all the history of any place that we have. And so there's always an opportunity for a leeway. And that is where the history becomes unbelievable.
So it's like an artist's liberty you're taking, where you
Yes.
kind of not necessarily have it as a fact,
Yes,
but
yes.
you're guessing what it could have been.
Yes.
So
And
some stories have that.
That's true. And at the time, they said, we really want it to be entertaining.
Right.
And I can read you a couple of chapters from Carl Moore's book, but I don't think that'll be entertaining.
Right.
Right.
So
So
a little more
a
animated.
little more.
What part of Clay County's history surprises people the most that you've seen?
I think people may forget just what it took to settle in Clay County, to settle in this region of Appalachia. I loved finding out about the mix of just different nationalities, if you will, that came to Clay County. The Irish and the Scotch and the Scots and the Germans and the Dutch and many, many more over time. But I found that migration from homeland to here to be very intriguing. But out of that study, I also found the migration of my own family from Germany, in the case of my background, through Philadelphia, into Virginia, into Maryland, across Appalachia, into Ohio. I immigrated to Clay County into Georgia in 1970, and Clay County in 1990. And so I'm way behind my ancestors. But that part of Clay County, I think it's important for us to understand where we came from in the community we live. And so that's really what struck me as very interesting about Clay County, the people that moved here, the people that were here before us, where we have come and where we are going, leaving that message. The two questions I would say is, where are you from, how long have you been here? And because so many people miss the fact that there is a core group of people that have been here for hundreds of years here in Clay County who settled Clay County.
Yeah,
And-
the other video series that we do for Clay County Historical and Arts Council is one-on-one with Clay County history, and I have met several families that are at least 5 generations that can go back before it was a Clay County.
Yes.
And it's amazing so check those series out as well
Yes.
if you will. Why do you think local history matters so much?
I think it's a matter of respect. I think that people who move here I feel like there's an importance to be respectful of all that it took to make this the place that you fell in love with, that you wanted to move to. You know, the journey is not the goal of being in Clay County is to understand the rich heritage that's here. I think that's very important so that we don't move here and then try to make wherever we came from here now. Because you'll miss the richness of where we are. The opportunity. It's a great opportunity here to get involved in so many things. The idea of retirement here is, if somebody said, "Well, I don't have anything to do," I just don't know I don't know where they are.
Yeah, because there is so much packed in. I
Right.
think our population is like somewhere around 492 in the town of Hayesville,
Yes.
and just under 13,000 for the entire county. And in this little community, there is so much packed. And
Yes.
one of the things that's amazing is this, where we're sitting today at the Peacock Performing Arts Center. There's so much going on here. I was really impressed when I moved here 6 years ago about it.
See what happens in the summer. What's the population swell to?
Oh, I don't know those
In
numbers.
July.
I should look that up.
Yes, yes.
But I know it's a lot. When you think about the story of our mountains here in the Appalachia area, what stands out to you the most?
There's the tall tale of Jack. And I've said I've been intrigued by the Indians and the Native Americans. But I also I was a whitewater kayaker, and for about 10 years in my search for that middle age challenge in the world. And so the outdoors of Appalachia is great. The stories of that you can make up about Blood Mountain and Smack Ass Gap and Peckerwood and Cold Branch and all the different interesting little coves and valleys we have, or the changes that happened with the lake, becoming a lake, instead of a meandering river through farmland, and the shift of agriculture to tourism, and so it makes it rich in and the animal life that's here and the plant life that's here. It makes it a rich fabric that we can weave into stories beyond the history, beyond the history that's already here, and not saying this is less than that, this is more. It's just a variety in it, and they lend themselves to stories. In family stories, I search about my own family more as I enjoy our hometown newspaper, the Clay County Progress, because they just had a great story about the Lowe's family. It was in last week's paper, and you'll hear more about that in another time when we talk about it in the future. But looking at the life of the people that have been here, that have settled here, and that have been here, like you said, for multiple generations. So those intriguing things about the mountains, the physicality of it, as well as the people of it, as well as the things that go wrong, like the big snow of '93, which I lived through too. They're going to have
How much would it snow did we get in '93?
Oh, in '93, let's see, I had 18 inches on top of my bird feeder.
Wow.
Okay. And folks had, we were out of electricity for 5 days, but there were folks out of electricity for a couple of weeks. And you couldn't drive out because 18 inches of snow is just more snow.
Yeah.
So,
And I've only been here 6 years, and I don't think we've gotten more than 1 inch since I've been here.
So it'll be, hopefully we'll never have a snow as big as the snow in 93. Because if you were here in 93, it'll be not forgotten.
Right. Are there any people or legends or moments from the area that really stick with you?
Well, yes. I know some characters. I know some people, some of which are characters. Tim Ryan was a incredible storyteller that lived in Brasstown for years. He was about 80 years old. He just passed away last year, but he was a landscape architect, but he also learned to be a blacksmith. He was a cook. His mother cooked wonderfully, and he actually left money to the folk school for their cooking school, their kitchen, the kitchen. And so Tim is a character, and he also, when Lies and Pies, the festival that was from 2000 to 2005, when that was a festival, Tim won that festival for 5 years in a row as the biggest liar. So he was an old time liar, but tall tale. But I'll tell you another fella that is that taught me that you could read a story and read a poem dynamically is Bob Grove, and he's a character in my mind, a gentleman, a character. He also has done. He talks about having 50 jobs, but he was with Grove. He started several businesses as Grove. So if you Grove in front of a business, it probably was started at some point with him.
Okay.
And lastly, actually, a living legend at this moment in time is Clay Logan. I think Clay. I like Clay. We're good friends. I think we're good friends. Clay. What he did with Clay's Corner and what he did with Possum Drop, and the folks at Prince Plus Prince Plus is another Robert is another great guy, but the Butch over at Science Fast, and what they did with Punkin' Chunkin', and they're bringing in that big gas-driven cannon that put the Capitol in cannon when it came to shooting pumpkins out into nowhere. But there, Rob Tiger would be the person here to tell you really about Luther and the moonshine and other legends. But those are folks that come to mind right away when I think of legendary characters and characters in Clay County.
What do you think is a story about, from our region, that people still need to hear?
Well, I still believe the Cherokee, the Cherokee Nation, the stories of the Cherokee Nation are very, very important because it was just so fundamental to setting the basis and the groundwork for the possibility of, and the not ease, because the word ease and settling anywhere is not, if you're the first settler anywhere is not easy. But it sure helped. And in most cases, when we get in trouble or when we're involved in something new, we need somebody to help us. And if it hadn't been for the early Cherokee Nation here, it wouldn't have been as easy. And I realized there did come a point where there was a struggle. Okay, but yes, if everybody forgot and forgave themselves, they would understand the importance of both.
I agree.
The settlers and the Cherokee.
Well, let's run back to the storytelling part. What advice would you give someone that wants to become a storyteller?
Start.
To start?
Well,
take that first step?
Yes, and find a stage, find a platform. It doesn't. When I say stage, we think of this stage, which is a great place, the Peacock Playhouse is an unbelievable place, an unbelievable treasure to Clay County. But when I finished my workshop and I walked out to be a storyteller, okay, first off, I wasn't too confident about saying I'm a storyteller, but I said I was learning to be a storyteller. Well, I had been in healthcare for 45 years, and so I needed to find a platform. I needed to find a place, a stage, someplace to practice. And one of those places, or two of those places, were the nursing homes in Clay County and the nursing home in Peachtree. And I knew, because I was in healthcare, had been a nursing home administrator, that they needed activities. And so I went to them and I said, would you mind if I come once a month and tell stories and do a program on storytelling? And they said, absolutely, sure, because they need activities. And they don't want any activity, but they were willing to accept this activity that I chose. So I created a program called Reminiscing, Storytelling, and Capturing Personal History. And I am still going once a month to Clay County Care Center and still doing that program. And it's been very, very well received over and over again. So that became a platform. I started to say a stage, but a platform for me, because I was okay at it, and particularly the part about reminiscing. But I wasn't a great storyteller, and every day I work to be a better storyteller. So I'm not saying I'm a great storyteller today. So I would say to a person that was stepping out and wanted to tell the story is to find a place, a platform. The library wants and encourages programs. We started a group. First off, I came out. I didn't have any place to go, but I joined, and I asked if I could join a writers group. So the coffee with writers and poets that meets once a month at the library, I showed up. And I wrote down some of my stories. And actually, some of them I initially read stories. Occasionally, I wrote a poem. I actually kind of enjoyed that. I do enjoy that. I'm still part of the Western North Carolina Writers Network today, and support them, and they support my writing. I now write some poetry. I write some short stories, and I tell stories, obviously. And so they really have been nurturing and caring. So they are welcoming. So look for a group of people where you can express yourself and where you can get out there and tell a story. Those are a couple of places I can go. At the school, they love for you to read to the children. I'll tell you what, when you read to the children and you get a children's book, okay, and you're reading to the children, they don't see the words. They do not know the story. Okay, so you do not have to follow the lines, every line. You can improv. You can tell a story within that using your imagination, creativity, and they will be in awe of you. And it will be a wonderful thing for them to see someone reading and telling a story.
Those are all great ideas.
Yep.
At the care center, do the residents get up and tell stories and reminisce as well?
They usually answer. The reminiscing part is answering questions. I've had one-on-ones. As a matter of fact, I wish I had his name with me. The last, because sometimes there are 15 and sometimes there are 5 and sometimes there are 1 person that will show up. And if there's one, this gentleman I was with last week has been one of those people that's lived generationally in Clay County. And I learned more from him, talking to him about the different things that were going on in Clay County in his lifetime than I ever knew. It's, another thing about learning about history and learning about Clay County is to listen to the folks that lived it if you get a chance. like you and I were talking about, not asking enough questions of our family. Well, there are elders out there that, if we listen to them, we can learn a lot. So that happens at the care center.
I think that's so important, and I know that once our elders are in the care center, they don't have enough to do.
Right.
And I think that telling stories or doing even a question and answer session can help with their cognitive and their memories. I think that would help a lot. So I commend you for that. Thank you.
You're welcome. I use a framework every month. It's the same framework. So I look at a framework is basically going to say what's happening, okay, and then what's happening in the nation, what's happening in the state, what's happening in the community, what's happening in your life, my life, what's happening in your life. And that framework I use every month because it changes every month. And we'll also go, what holiday is it? And we'll ask questions about, well, how did you experience this holiday? How did you celebrate it? How did you celebrate Christmas, New Year's, your birthday, 4th of July? So it's fun. You can use, and I look up on the internet, what's the holiday today? There are holidays. There's more than one holidays each day.
Every single day,
for
right.
365 days a year.
Right.
Some of them are state holidays. Some of them are national holidays. Some of them are federally recognized. But there are a whole bunch of holidays.
Some of them are quite hilarious.
Yes, I know. So it can be intriguing. It gives them. And we talk about that. We always sing a happy birthday to all the people in the world, including the people in the room that have a birthday.
Nice.
So, yeah.
What kind of stories or projects that are upcoming are you most excited about?
Well, exciting is always a good word. I sold. I donated. I didn't sell. I donated one of those silent auction items last year, and it was in April. I was at the Georgia Mountain Storytelling Festival, which is another incredible Georgia-based festival in Hiawassee, Young Harris. A 1 hour presentation, storytelling, for a $100 value, which is pretty inexpensive for these day and age. But you never know who's going to buy this. And it was 1 hour, and I anticipated someone might hire a storyteller for an hour at a birthday party, or an anniversary party, or even a bachelor's party, or bridesmaids party, or a party of some sort. So and last year, this 2025, someone bought that. And we didn't get around to talking about it. I finally called them at the end of the fall, and I said, we need to get together to, what would you like to, what would you like me to do for your, this certificate? What would you like? Well, he said, well, do you think you'd be willing to come to Lawrenceville, Georgia, to do a presentation on how to be a better storyteller to 150 future Santa Clauses at the Northern Lights Santa Claus Academy, and then be the entertainment for an hour for the dinner in this same big ballroom.
Right.
And so, of course, I said yes. And so that was one. So this year, I put that same thing in the sound auction at the Georgia Mountain Storytelling Festival. And at the end of the evening, last evening, and everybody got their sound auction item, two people walked up to me and said, we are so excited. We got our bid. We've got your time for an hour. And they said, oh, I thought that's great. That's great. One more time I put down there, I was, birthday parties, anniversaries, house parties, blah. And they go, I said, well, this is going to be great. What do you have in mind? And they said, well, we'd love you to come and do an hour presentation to our school next fall for an hour for a group of 1st through 5th graders.
That's a young crowd for you, huh?
It's not impossible. My point is, you never know what's happening. So I'm looking forward. You asked me what I'm excited about. I am excited about what next fall is going to look like. I'm also excited about the doing the history of Clay County for the Chamber of Commerce. I was excited about this discussion we're having today, and I'm really excited about I'm doing a presentation on Appalachian culture to the Food Alliance. I think it's Cherokee County Food Alliance in June, and in September, two things. I'm looking forward to where there's an organ recital, it's an organization that does the organ players that Jerry Taylor is responsible for. And Jerry asked if we would come and tell stories between organ performances.
Okay.
So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that unfolds. So there's, those are things that are coming up this year outside of the routine storytelling that I do. So it's going to be a fun year.
If you could tell just one story to future generations, which one would it be?
That's a big story. That's a big ask.
There's a lot to choose from, I'm sure.
Well, and probably a year from now, it might be a different story. I think from a history standpoint, I think just one of the things I'm doing in the fall will be to be involved with the Cherokee Day that's here, the Heritage Day, and so the history of the Cherokee is really valuable. I think that's important. I think the other story, I would write the story because I don't think I've really ever told it, but I've said to you that it's important that we not lose, that we capture our history of our family, and more importantly, tell the story of the history of our family. So I guess if I were going to tell future generations of something, I would say to not lose not lose that thread that is their family, and not lose the idea of the importance of community here and in America and worldwide.
Personally, I want to ask you, how can I get my grandchildren interested in hearing stories about my life, my parents' life, and my grandparents' life? Because, now they have so many opportunities to grab a screen and be entertained. How can I spark that interest in the younger generation?
Well, I'm not sure you can, but depending on what age we're talking about,
Well,
I would say
17, 13, and 6.
I would suggest that you take them on a road trip and you
Pocket their phones?
Pocket their phones.
No screen time,
For an hour.
right?
Yeah.
Just be in the vehicle, or they can't get away and they can't hear a
And then
notification go off.
and then you tell the story.
Okay,
You're right. You even if you're driving.
yeah.
Okay. So I would say it's kind of funny. I would say trap them in a way.
Right.
But I think be conscious, be intentional in telling them stories of your family's history, and then look for opportunities, and let them know it'll be a closed amount of time. Okay. So because today there's time is so filled with so many opportunities and so many needs for people for their attention to be other places, other directions. So if you, so I said trap you, which is.
I understand what you meant by that.
But-
I'm not
but it
talking
was-
about
yeah.
locking them in the closet, but
Yeah, well,
get their
pretty close.
attention, get their attention away from the electronics.
Right.
And
Right.
if we're in a car traveling,
Yeah.
then they can't actually
Right.
walk away.
That's right. So if you take a
Great
drive,
advice.
yeah, there are places that you can do that, and also like I said, make it time limited, and be respectful of, if you have generational, like if you have children age, that are ranging from 6 or 7 to 20, then it may be 2 different groups. It may be the people, that you tell stories to the younger folks.
So make the story age appropriate.
Yes. Well, not just the story, but what you're going to, where you're going to do it. I mean, there'll be, if children and children will, young children, grade school, they're in the process of sitting down, having reading time, having, a painting time, having time. And so it would be, not that it'd be easier, but you can focus that group then, and you go, well, that's too, they're too young. Well, they're not too young. I mean, make it, tell a story as you would tell a story that you would like them to remember. And it doesn't have to be the world's crisis. Tell them the story about your grandfather, your mother, that you, or your favorite pet, something that's going to relate to them. And that some of those can be done in 1-minute elevator, what I call 1-minute elevator speeches, which in the day, it used to be if you had 1 minute in an elevator and you wanted to get another job, or you wanted to get a promotion, or you wanted that you had to have that 1 minute of information where you can put all information together. I took my grandchildren they were trapped, in a car, and we went to the cemetery. And I showed them where I was going to be buried. I took them to our family cemetery where 4 generations of family are buried, and around one tombstone. Okay, so, and then we went to another part of the cemetery. We saw another segment, and we went to another part. Now, I don't know if they'll ever remember that day, but it's an intentional. When we go out, and we put flowers on the grave, and they get to go and do that. So they're trapped a little bit because they're taking a ride with Grandpa, And my daughter now and I spend she lives in Ohio, so when I go to Ohio, we spend time together. And ironically, we were talking about my grandson, her son, Anthony, and about his, the future, because we're wondering, like, what's he going to do? He's graduating from high school, and he's trying to figure it out. He's going to technical college a little bit, but he's not sure what he wants to do. So I took the opportunity to tell Anthony my career path, okay, from the first job all the way to today, because he'd never heard it. But I wanted to show him, not that he needed to know every detail. I could have made up somebody's path, but my path, because I wanted to know that it's not a straight line. I just said, and my message to him was, stay on the path. So that was him listening to my career. Now maybe he'll listen, maybe he'll hear 1 or 2 things he might remember, I don't know. My daughter, my grandson, when there's an opportunity, take it. And then when then create some opportunities. It will be lost over time. But I took a very important point at Christmas time. I said to the granddaughters and the nieces and nephews, and my sister-in-law and my wife, Kathy, I facilitated at least a little bit of time where I said, well, why don't you tell the children about when you were publishing a newspaper, okay? And with Susan, when you were selling real estate, okay? And so kind of facilitating that moment in time, and I think that is helpful in the process. You might even get to throw in a fact about yourself, but you can facilitate for others so that children will know about, So it's little times of trapping little times, a little bit of a time.
Wonderful advice.
Yes.
Will you tell us a little story about the pictures and the cup that we got sent here?
Well, now this, yes, I will. This is family. These are all family pictures.
this cup probably has, well, I'm reaching for the cup instead of the pictures of people. But I will say, when I was born and raised on a farm, and I did say that my Aunt Arlene, my mother's sister, and my grandpa and grandma Schweitzer, and this is my grandpa and grandma Rarey on my father's side. But my Aunt Arlene and my grandpa and grandma Rarey, when my mother died, I was only 6 years old. And the three of them, and we were, the family, the extended family was going, well, Ike can come and live with us, and Fred, he can live with us, and Newt, he can, when they call me Newt instead of Canute, Newt, he can come live with us. So we all had homes. Fortunately for us, we weren't going to go to an orphanage, which they were orphanage back then. We were going to be taken care of in a lot because we had this family, which is so important. But my Aunt Arlene and my grandpa and grandma, they took us in as all three of us. And Aunt Arlene is the one that grandpa was very quiet, and Aunt Arlene would really not have done anything that grandpa would have not wanted. But she was the matriarch of the family at that time, because she was grandpa and grandma were in there between 60 and 70, I mean 65 and 70 years old. And back then, 65 and 70 years old was older, okay, than it is today. So my Aunt Arlene raised us. She's the one that created the 5 rules that I tell in my story. And so when I first started storytelling, I took this picture with me everywhere I told stories. And so when we talked about coming together and being here today, I thought, well, I'm going to bring my picture of my Aunt Arlene, because she was an amazing woman, hardworking, loved her sister, my mother, and did the best she could, even though she never had children, never been married, and just was a strong woman. So on the farm, which was Grandpa and Grandma Schweitzer, and the picture of my grandpa and grandma Rarey, then my dad is actually on the left side here as a young man before he was married. They were my grandpa and grandma Rarey, and they would have been glad, or not, nobody sure is glad, but they would have taken the responsibility and taken us in, at least one of us or two of us, because they too were older. So they were there too, and they were always there for us. My grandma, Rarey, was one of 10 children, and she worked in a truck farming with her mother and her 9 brothers and sisters. And so they worked really hard. On my father, or grandfather, he inherited some property. It was a good, large farmer in Ohio all those years. So it was a farm family. I was born and raised from a farm family. Both of these families represent farm families. And so one of the responsibilities that my brothers and I had, particularly as I moved over at 6 years old, being about 7 years old, my brother Fred was 8 or 9 years old, was we did chores on the farm. We had cows and pigs and sheep, and we had a pump house down next to the barn. And the pump house was one of those it really was a milk house, where you had to put in cold water in a big old trough, and you set milk cans after you milk the cows in there to keep them cool, so the next day the milk truck could come and pick them up. Outside of that, milk house on a hook next to the pump. That was a manual pump first, and then as we got older, it was a electric pump, and a big old water trough for the cows and a little water trough for the pigs. But over there on a hook was a cup, and it wasn't when it was not disposable, tin cup, and that tin cup, everybody drank out of it. Threw the water out, hung it back on the hook. Threw the water out, hung it back on the hook. And so when I got older and began to think about life and thinking about memories, I thought, where in the world is that cup? And I actually bought a cup that looks a little bit like this cup, but it was a brand new cup with galvanized, enameled. And my brother who's still on the farm, still a farmer, but has a farm corporation, looked up in that milk house, in the back corner on the shelf, covered with dust, and he found this old cup.
That's amazing.
And this is the old cup that we drank out of
That's
as
amazing.
kids.
Oh, I love it.
From the time I was 6 years old. And the cup was on that nail, on that hook, for a lot more years than that before I saw it. This is probably an antique. It wasn't quite as rusty as before, but you can see we had a lot of iron in the water because there's
Sure.
a lot of iron around. So that cup I brought today is the first thing I picked up. I thought, well, I need to bring something, so I'm going to bring this cup. And then I thought, well, I can't go anyplace without my aunt's picture, and I wish I had. We have a family picture, but just not real handy, of the Schweitzer family with we boys in it. So those are family things about family right there. Family growing up in Ohio.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Can you tell us about all your upcoming events? You have so many different platforms where you're at. I can think 4 off the top of my head.
Right.
Can you let us know what your schedule looks like or where they can
Yes.
find your schedule?
Yes. Well, yes. I do have a number of things. I said earlier that I walked out of a workshop looking for a stage, looking for a platform to go. But the other thing I realized was that I wasn't alone in that process. That it was something that everybody really could use. The writers in our community, the poets in our community, and over time the storytellers in our community, and folks that played music, but they couldn't sell a ticket or give it away if they wanted to, really at times probably, or they could, but they didn't know they could. And so I thought, well, what are we gonna do with that? And so I started a group called Tell It Like It Is, which is a critique group for storytellers, and it started in the library, at Moss Memorial Library, and we had it there for a number of years, and then COVID hit, and we went online and we put it on Zoom, we Zoomed it out, and it's still going on today actually, and still on Zoom and still on Thursdays, and storytellers and writers can come and practice there and get critique on their stories or on their, particularly on their stories or on their writing. Although the different work groups, workshopping groups with writers and poets, they do have some great feedback that they can get through and the library would have a schedule of a variety of things with that. So, but that was good for work, but that was good for them. I'm not totally active with that. I've got 3 people that do the Zoom programming every Thursday now. But I thought the other thing was, well, there needs to be something else. And I went out thinking I was just going to find an evening, a place where people could get together. And I walked into and talked to Mary Jo Constantine at the Keep Me Posted, which has a little coffee shop in it as well. And she said, well, I don't have any evenings available except, I've got a Friday that you could have on a Friday. And I thought, what in the world are we going to do on a Friday? And that's when I came up with the idea of doing an open mic. So we do an open mic on Fridays, the 3rd Friday of the month, every month. The Chamber of Commerce has our schedule and it posts it, which we really appreciate. The Clay County Progress has our schedule and posts the schedule, which we really appreciate it. And so that's every month, and except in December. And that is for storytellers, poets, writers, singer-songwriters, musicians. If you you can sign up, the first usually 9 to 10 people that sign up from 6 to 7:30 on a Friday. It's for new people. You don't have any experience. You do the first time. It's a world of forgiveness. You can read your story for the first time. You've got 6 to 8 minutes to read a chapter or a short story, read a poem, tell a story, and that's been amazing. The first night we had 11 performers and we had 57 people in the coffee shop. Please don't tell the fire marshal.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah,
a lot.
that's a lot.
That's a great
We
turnout.
usually have 25 to 35 people on the third Friday of the month, and that's been ongoing. It's been ongoing since 2019, and it'll on the 20th, on the 13th, 15th, on the 15th of this month. Once again. So we have that going, and then I was involved with the folk school. I take usually a workshop there every once a month, once a year at least. But I noticed there was no storytelling in the evenings as part of their programming. And so a few years ago, after COVID, I proposed to them that we would do storytelling, and they said yes. And so on the third Wednesday of the month, we do storytelling. It's Kanute Rarey and friends. I usually invite 2 or 3 storytellers to come with me, and we tell an hour-long program from 7 to 8. All the workshop attendees are invited, plus all the public is invited to come to that. And we always have a variety of stories there with professionals or semi-professional storytellers that are there, and it's free to the public. It's open to the public. And then right after COVID, we had to get out. We had to get out. It was 2021, so we created this out of the gazebo. We created a series. I created this series called Fresh Air.
Out here in the square of Facebook?
At the Square of
Okay.
2021. It was. But we just had to get out. You
Yeah.
couldn't get inside. You had to get out. So I said, well, we'll just jump on the gazebo. And so we formatted on the gazebo. We were there for 1 or 2 years, but the last time we almost got rained out. We had to finish up in the courthouse. And at the time, I thought, man, we need to go someplace else. And so I thought, well, I'll come over to the Peachtree Playhouse and I'll ask them about what it would take to use the stage. Well, right about that time, Laurel Adams and Brian Hunter were thinking about a local series with local performers and local talent, encouraging local people to take the stage in something they called Scribes on Stage. And I said, well, I possibly could help with that. I mean, here are my ideas about Scribes on Stage. So at the time, we created 4 shows. And today, I would call them variety shows with a theme. And we created 4 shows that year. We did 4 shows a couple, 2 or 3 years. We've got 3 shows this year. And that is to feature local talent, some experienced, some very experienced, some with very little experience. Matter of fact, some people ask me how do I find my talent, and I just listen for my talent. Or observe for my talent. We had a school teacher. We have a school teacher that's played music with us and sang some great music. And all I saw was I walked into his classroom and I was listening to his presentation to the class, and I looked over and I saw a guitar in the corner. And after the class, I said, well, do you play the guitar? He said, yeah, I play the guitar. And I said, well, would you be interested in playing at the Peacock? Sometimes you just have to think about what your heart feels at that moment in time. 2 weeks before he performed at the Peacock for the first time, he called and he said, well, can I bring a couple of my cousins? And I said, sure. And it was one great performance. I mean, so we featured the folk school with junior Appalachian musicians. We usually have 4 or 5 storytellers. We've had a local minister, pastor, priest that tells stories with us regularly, and different folks. We try to introduce new talent. So that is Scribes on Stage, and it's our next program is August 22nd. This year, it's in August. We do Evening of Appalachian Tales, which will feature clogging. It will feature traditional Appalachian music, some storytelling, probably a jack tale, and then we do a Halloween show each Halloween. And we're going to be doing, it's called Stage Fright. Yeah, Ghost Stories at the Peacock.
Nice.
And we'll be doing Ghost Stories at the Peacock. So the Playhouse has really accepted us. We really appreciated their work. They've got a brand new sound system for us. They've got new lighting over the years with us. We're going to be raising funds to replace the roof. And it's just a great group of people in the front office and the sound and light people and the folks have embraced us. So that is beyond my usual working on different things. Those are the programs that are going to be going on this year related to storytelling. Storytelling and music, it's a good combination.
So you spoke of the Clay County Chamber's calendar. I want to let you know how to get to that. It's claychambernc.com, and then you'll just click on calendar in the upper right corner, and then you can search for Kanute or storytelling, or just scroll through the whole calendar. I believe we're over 300 events right now on the calendar as we speak. Was there any other stories or anything you wanted to mention that we didn't touch on today so far? I know we covered a lot.
Let's see. Oh, I love living here. It's a story in and of itself.
Yeah, living
We
here.
we got a porch. We sit on the porch every night, look out at the mountains. Thank God for being here.
That's right.
Yeah. I guess, and that I would appreciate that. The first two organizations I joined, the first organization, this community I joined was the Chamber of Commerce, because I think the Chamber of Commerce in every little community is so very helpful. But the other organizations that have, of course, drawn me into the county and into history have been the Clay County Historical and Arts Council, and also the Hayesville Historic Association or Incorporated, and just how welcoming people have been. So those are the things I would really want to say, that I really appreciate that. The John C. Campbell Folk School has been is a rich asset. The Tri-County Community College, I did teach business classes there when I first moved up here. I have an MBA in finance, so, and a healthcare background with a whole another story about it. So, and if it hadn't been for Richard Kelly and Steve Heinzman and Jane Heinzman, I wouldn't be here. So I really appreciate knowing them and having them as friends, and getting a chance to move up here in 1990. And I had to scramble a lot to stay here, but I did, and I'm so glad I did. And I'm kind of hoping that they'll be carrying me out of here, and that I won't be walking out of here. I'll be staying for the duration.
The duration, that's right.
That's right.
Well, as we wrap up our conversation with Kanute Rarey, it's clear his dedication to the arts and storytelling has made a lasting impact in Clay County. And through his work as a filmmaker, educator, and creative collaborator, Kanute has helped shine a light on the voices and history and unique characters of our community. His passion for capturing meaningful stories continues to inspire connection, creativity, and a deeper appreciation for the arts in our region. So we thank you so much for your time today, Kanute. I have really enjoyed speaking with you today.
Thank you. I've enjoyed speaking with you too, Tess.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of the Artist Spotlight video series for Clay County Historical and Arts Council. We hope you enjoyed getting to know this talented member of our creative community. Be sure to support your local artists by showing up at community events, spreading the word, and celebrating the creative talent that makes Hayesville so special. For more features like this, please follow us at Clay County Historical and Arts Council and stay connected with the arts right here in our community. And if you or someone you know would like to be featured in the series, please email me, Tess Thomas, at cchacHayesville@outlook.com. You can learn more by visiting our website, clayhistoryartsnc.org. We are also, you can connect with us also on Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. This episode has been made possible by a grant from Granny's Attic Thrift Store right here in Hayesville, North Carolina, and the NC Arts Council, a division of the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, a state agency. I'm Tess Thomas. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.